Welcome to the CEO of Destiny podcast, where you will find the tools to fulfill the purpose of your generation and wildly succeed in the marketplace. And now your host, Andre J. Benjamin.
So then you move from, so take us on your product journey. You start with with websites, you're doing it for yourself. You recognize that, hey, I can put stuff on here. I can promote other people's products. You try the affiliate, you're doing it. You're taking the capital and putting that towards the development of your own product. Now what's next?
First app comes along. Absolutely terrible app. It was a terrible game. It was called Rush Up. It got removed from the App Store. They manually removed it because it's so old. I think I launched it in probably 2014, and it was just some simple little game where you hop like this ball through obstacles, and that thing probably got like 5,000 downloads, maybe max. But I didn't.
Which to the average viewer, that sounds like a lot, right? But talk about why that's very small with the market.
So the way kind of app ads work is like you get paid. Same with Google AdSense, right? You get paid like a fraction of a cent for every impression that may show up. But I think at the end of the day, like, sure, 5,000 downloads, that's a good amount of downloads, but like people weren't staying, right? They'd download the app and then delete it right away. So I think that was like kind of the main, it just wasn't a good app. But the first one's never the best.
You were learning from it. So 100%. So when you looked at it, what was the next iteration of how to make it better? What did you learn from doing the first app that was terrible?
Well, to me, it wasn't even a failure, right? It was the coolest thing ever. Looking back, it was a failure, but like going through the process of it, my friends were playing my app, which was ever, right? Like it was so sick. I could care less if I made $40. You know what I mean? So I wasn't deterred, right? Like I was, if anything, like excited, like, oh, I can do this. My friends were like blown away that my name was on the App Store, right? So I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. So I had to keep going. And then my next app was called Grid. And this was a puzzle game where you kind of fit different shaped puzzles into a grid, a 10 by 10 grid, right? And if you fill up, it was kind of like Tetris, but you can manually move the pieces. This app is still on the App Store under my name. You can check it out. It's still fun to this day. But that one really took off. I like hit a stride with the marketing on Twitter. And that one got hundreds of thousands of downloads, and I made upwards of $10,000 in 1 month. Not profit. I think I spent like $3,000 marketing it on Twitter. But I made 10 grand in 1 month off that app while I was in high school. And
lovely.
That was,
how old are you while you're in high school when this happens?
I was probably 16.
So you're a sophomore in high school, right? You're about a sophomore, and you make this. So does it feel real when you see the numbers that it continues to increase? Or are you just like, this is crazy. This is something that I'm really going to get serious about?
It felt real. And,
did you tell people, or were you waiting to tell? Or were you waiting?
100%. I told my parents, I was like, I'm dropping out of school. I'm getting my own place. Like, I'm gone. This is it for me. And they were like, no, you're not. Like,
why am I even going to school anymore? I made more than my teacher this month.
Right, exactly. And that's how I was feeling. But
so how did you decide? So then how did you take us back to how you decided on, how do you decide on what's going to be a game? You get what I'm saying? How do you decide what's the opportunity? What is something people might want? What is something I'm going to take a risk on? How do I know that this will connect? And and you don't know, but I'm saying what was the metrics by which you decided on, and the criteria by, hey, this looks like an opportunity worth pursuing. I'll try this game.
It's literally all just trial and error. I could count, like, I've probably had, I could count the number of very successful businesses that I've run on like probably one or two hands. The number of businesses that I've run that have failed, who knows? It's a lot. So, it's a lot of trial and error. And again, going back to like honing your marketing skills and your building skills, like when I'm building something, I always think marketing first. I'm like, all right, how am I going to promote this to the potential customer? Is this a promotable product? And that's kind of how I decided. And I knew Grid right off the bat would be promotable because it looked clean. It was super clean. I knew it could be an addicting game. And then I worked in like certain sound effects, and I put in a leaderboard, and I made different game modes because I knew that like the psychology behind like playing the game. People would play this thing for hours, and they did. And that's why Grid was so successful, is because people stayed on the app and they kept playing over and over and over again, because it's a puzzle game. People stick on the app for a long time, and then, you know, they want to improve their score or whatever.
So that's something that contributes to it, to that game stickiness, is what, both the competition and then also the problems, or what are you saying that contributed to Grid's success?
I think it was a big part in marketing. Like, it was a super marketable game. And like you said, like, people stayed on the app for a long time. It was a puzzle game. It was challenging, and there was a leaderboard, so there's competitiveness too, right? I think all of those things contributed.
So what were some of the skills that a person would need in building an app? So you looked at it, you started with the one that didn't do well, then you moved on to Grid, and Grid started, and this is the sequence, right? Or were there some ones in between that failed?
No, it was straight from, so the first one was called Rush Up.
Rush Up.
Terrible. And then Grid. Nothing in between, just kind of kept building. But, you know, it's funny, you don't need a crazy amount of skills. You just need, like, because I get help on my apps. Like, I get help from developers.
Absolutely.
Early apps, I was mainly doing myself, but like now with Puff Count and something more complex, I 100% need a team behind me that I hire and outsource. So you don't need a crazy amount of skills, right? Like, you just need to have the drive and to have the vision, and you can build a team around you that will help you bring it to life.
And how do you build a team? How did you build a team? This is the question that I'm asking you, because everybody's different. We've had guests from different sectors, from hedge funds to people who are tremendous authors, to people who are there's just an array of people from different sectors who have been highly successful. But for yourself, and they talked about how they build their team, but how did Stephen go about, why was team important, and why was it important for you to move away from, you know what, I have the ability to develop, to be the developer, but I can also how did you gauge that your efforts would best be put in to something else?
This is another skill that had to be honed, right? And like, as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, like, you have to develop this skill on like learning how to attract talent, how to hire people, how to manage people. And I started on Upwork, hiring freelancers, right? Like, I think I've given Upwork thousands and thousands of dollars. Like, I'm probably one of their best customers. Like, I love that website because you can find such great talent, and a majority of the talent that I work with is overseas. Like,
yes,
Philippines, you name it, like wherever. And you can find really great underrepresented talent that's like cheap. So that's kind of where I first started building teams, was on Upwork and hiring freelancers. And I got burned a lot of the times too, right? Like, these people would provide or deliver something that I didn't even wasn't even close to what I was asking for, and I lost a lot of money that way. But again, a lot of trial and error in building that skill set. And, I've made a lot of great connections too. Like, some of these freelancers I've been working with for 4 or 5 years now.
So why is improving, because we're going to go on with the rest of the product journey, but why was improving people's lives so important for you? You mentioned it as kind of a core of who you are. Why is that important to you? How did someone improve your life in the past that made you say, this is a way I want to pay it forward? Because we'll talk more in depth about some of the ways that you've journeyed into paying it forward. Right. But what happened in your own life? Because people don't just get up and say, I want to help others. I mean, maybe there's some great kid that's born that way, but most children are going to be inherently selfish, and they're just going to be looking out for number one.
100%. I kind of stumbled into it, really. I feel like a lot of it goes back to, the way I was raised and the way, my parents taught me, and they were like, you're going to change the world. They put so much belief into me, and I really appreciate them for that. And also, just watching my projects like blow up, like, okay, a couple 100,000 downloads on a game on, Grid, that's great. But what if I built a product that was like a health product, or it was helping people, and then 100,000 people downloaded it? Then I'm changing lives. I'm not just making money, right? I'm not just wasting people's time on a game. Like, I'm improving people's lives. And I made that connection in college. when vapes hit the market hard.
What college did you go to first?
Pepperdine University in Malibu, California.
And did you enjoy it?
Loved it.
Loved it. What was your major?
Advertising.
So you were focused from a long time. You knew that marketing was important to you. You're like, I'm
laser focused. And it's funny because I started as a business admin major, but they stuck me in a bunch of math classes and a bunch of, I was like, what am I doing? What am I doing here? Like, why am I learning all these formulas? It feels like, chemistry in high school all over again. Forget that. I looked at the advertising major, looked at the class load, and it was like, you could be way more creative, right? And like, I love the teachers that I had in advertising. They were like, yo, come up with your own campaigns, come up with your own product. And like, that is right up my alley. And I
you were thinking you could apply it to your real stuff that you were doing right then, right?
100%. And one of my main major projects at the end of my senior year was on puff count. And funny enough, the guy almost failed me on that, but whatever. Long story short, I was not the best student. I was not at all.
So how important was schooling in your journey, and what would you say is the difference between school versus education? Because I know there's a factor that, cultural, societal, and our parents who will sometimes strangle us if we don't go a path that they have. But how important was schooling versus education to you? And talk about your journey, because there are people that are on the spectrum, all kinds, the academic spectrum, the education, the schooling, they have these feelings, they've had these experiences. How did that affect you as an entrepreneur and your confidence level? What would you say to a student that might have struggled? Talk to those people.
100%. Well, I'm one of those students, I struggled day in, day out at school. And, it caused a lot of tension with my parents too, right? Because I was not a good student, and, my parents wanted me to do great in school, but it just didn't make sense to me. Right. And like, it was a tough getting through school. Like, it was tough, but
what did you not like about school?
I just didn't like, I was like, I don't see me doing this in the future. Like, so I was like, why am I here learning this today? And like, I had that, I don't know. I just didn't want to do it. And, it turned me off.
So what they were delivering in the classroom, you couldn't see how you could apply it to real life.
Not at all. I was not interested in the classwork, and the stuff that I was interested, like for example, the advertising courses in college, A's, straight A's, no problem at all. Loved it. Show up to class early, which is insane for me. But the chemistries and, all those types of classes, like, no way. I'm not interested. I'm not going to put in the work to do that. But I think what really got me through school was there were a couple teachers that, really saw what I was trying to do and believed in me. Like, for example, Mr. Nick in high school, comp sci teacher. He saw that, I had a skill set, and I was like, I love your class. Can I work on my own projects? And you grade me on that. So like, he let me work on my side businesses, which were Grid and, Rush Up and, the Twitter promotion website stuff. He let me work on that. Nice. And gave me a grade, because I was doing like what he was teaching. I was doing coding development, but he let me do it in my own way, which was incredible. And like, without Mr. Nick, I definitely would not. He gave me a lot of confidence, and you can see this day, I think he commented on, we still stay in touch, and like, I owe the world to him. And there's a couple teachers like that who like really like will get students like me through school and give us like.
So did that spark that seed in you? Because you talk about how you were raised. When you say how you were raised, what were some of the values that your parents instilled in you that made you want to work to improve people's lives?
Thank you for listening to today's episode. Do us a favor. If this was useful in any way for you, please go to iTunes and leave us a review. Reviews will allow others to easily discover the podcast. If you'd like more information and to receive a free download, rediscover your destiny, go to ceoofdestiny.com. Thanks again, and tune in next time.